Gregg as I'm manipulating a few things here. Cathy, welcome.
Hello,
Hi there.
how you
You,
doing, everybody?
y- yeah, yeah. Hi, everybody. You're a California Central Coast photographer as well as a national storm chaser. I do know that a lot of people follow you regarding the weather, so I have a lot of questions around that. We're going to talk weather today. It's not very pretty outside, but hey, we know the sun's up
Hey,
in
it's
the
the
morning.
marine layer in July. It's a good thing.
It's the marine layer on the Central Coast in July. That's true. That's true. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and especially how you got involved in weather, Cathy.
Well, since I was a little kid, my dad, in the bio, it says that my dad at the age of 12 got his merit badge um, in Boy Scouts for climatology, which is the study of weather averages and maximums, minimums, rainfall, all that fun stuff. But he's always had an interest in weather ever since he was a kid. And so when we were born, he really started, when we go on trips and stuff, he would explain, thunderstorms. And anytime they came through the LA area when we lived down there, he would explain, what was going on. He'd take us down to the beach to see the big waves. And so
Oh,
we all have this, we call it in our genetics, a love of weather. And I went a step further and have chased weather now with it like the past 30 years, and did most of it on the Central Coast until the last maybe 10 years now. I've been chasing the monsoon in Arizona, and the last 5 years I've been chasing in the high plains of the United States, chasing tornadoes and supercells and severe weather. Big difference between
that's,
California and there, I'll tell you.
yeah, that seems a little bit risky to me. Do you go with a group? Are you by yourself in a car? Or how does that all work? I have no idea.
I go with a group. It's called Tempest Tours. They have the best of the best. His name is Bill Reed. He's one of the best chasers out there, I think. There are a lot of other good chasers, but I told my dad the only way I would do this in the high plains with tornadoes involved was to go with someone that knew what they were doing. And he suggested Bill Reed, and I already knew who he was on Facebook, but I didn't realize that my father had known him. And Bill is with the American Meteorological Society in Los Angeles. So they both know each other and have known each other for a very long time. So I felt safe enough to join him on Tempest Tours. And there's about 11 of us total that go in two vans and chase severe weather for
Okay,
11
risk
days.
taker. You are but a risk taker.
An
You're
adrenaline rush to me, and I love it.
yeah, yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. Do you get some good shots out of this?
I get some pretty good photography. I have yet to see a tornado up close and personal. I've seen them from about 3 to 4 miles away, which only look about that big on my camera. So one of these days, maybe hopefully I can get out there and actually see a real tornado up close and personal, but from a safe distance.
Great, great. Yeah, we all want to be safe with
Yeah.
tornadoes. Yeah,
And
we
that's the other thing that we do out there too, is we aren't there just to photograph. Most of us belong to our local weather spotter service for the National Weather Service. And if there's a tornado, it's called in, we see it, we're eyes on the ground. And if someone's home gets hit, we stop everything we're doing and we go and we render aid.
wow, wow. How wonderful.
Luckily,
Doing
I haven't seen that yet.
yeah, no, that yeah, we're California girls. We don't see this kind of stuff. But you did catch a heck. I gotta point this out, which I'm going to include once this is on YouTube, WonHeart TV station. You caught a storm locally back in 2006, and I think you made a video to some incredible music. But the shots of lightning at that time, and I'm going to post that. But how did you come across that? Like, who told you about that?
Well, that was a fluke storm. Even the National Weather Service hadn't even predicted it. I was actually out at Byron Vineyards shooting them doing crush, for the grapes.
Oh,
And my friend Vicki Rance was out there. She allowed me on the property to go photograph it and everything. And I had finished up and went home, and I was eating dinner, and she gives me a call, And she says, "What are you doing right now?" And I said, "I'm eating dinner." And she goes, "Get your butt out here right now. There's a huge thunderstorm." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I look out my window and it's blue skies. And then my window rattled. And I was like, so I'm like, I hope I have more, battery life in my camera and everything. But I finally went out there and got up to the top of the hill there at Telephone and Clark, and just this massive lightning storm going off. And luckily, it was what they call a dry lightning, so that meant there wasn't a lot of rain. So I was able to photograph it by sitting in my car and shooting out my passenger window.
Incredible.
For I was out there for 3 hours. I finally gave up because I was tired.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've watched the video and it is something else. So again, I'll post that when
Well,
we
thank you. I appreciate that.
replay this video, plus other places they can find you. Of course, I had you shoot my photos for my own music site, so little credit there again. Beautiful
Thanks.
shots. Thank you, thank you. All right, let's get down to some weather,
All
girlfriend.
right.
You know, you and I have spoken about the weather changes. You mentioned some time ago there's different things you use to find weather calculations. I'm not sure how this is all done, but can you explain a little bit about, what you've seen lately with weather and I don't know
But
this.
I've been doing a lot of research lately and trying to find out why, with the so-called global warming, what the trends are. And for a long time in the National Weather Service, you were able to pull up weather data that goes back beyond 1979. And now you can't. And I don't understand that. And I don't think it's right. But anyways, a lot of people seem to forget about 1936. And
What happened in 1936?
well, did you ever read The Grapes of Wrath?
No, but I
No. John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath, had to do with the Dust Bowl era.
Oh, okay, yes, of course, of course.
Um, there was extreme weather back then. Let me see if I can pull it up and show you what happened.
Well, yes, a lot of people in the 30s. Oh my gosh, it was devastating. The fields
Yeah.
dried up, the Dust Bowl, of course. So many
And the
people.
same thing happened in 1911. Not just, and this is global, this isn't just for North America, but these temperatures were in North America in 1936 were extreme.
Okay.
So I'm going to share this chart. And back in the 1930s, can you see that?
I can.
All right. In July of 1936, on this date, July 15th, which was a couple of days ago, 30 states in the United States were 100 degrees or more.
Oh my word.
In Missouri, it was 118. And these were not just one day things, they lasted for about 5 or 6 days. If you
Oh,
look at the list, you got Missouri, California, Arizona, Iowa, Oklahoma, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas. It goes on and on, South Dakota, Arkansas. So nobody ever talks about this. And if those temperatures were to hit today, people would be freaking out.
yeah.
And when they sit there and say that we broke a record from 1983 with the 95-degree
Yeah.
temperature, um, and it ends up being 0.8 degrees or something, it's, to me, that's not extreme.
Mm-hmm.
These type of temperatures to me are very extreme, and it hasn't happened since. So you have to ask yourself what changed.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
And
that's
so,
fascinating. I mean, I did talk to somebody about the agriculture and over the last person I talked to, Mandy Davis, about the environment changes having to do with also the fields being plowed over and we just dried ourselves out in the fires, that we're having due to that.
right, there was two different things that came together, and that
Okay.
was the extreme weather plus the over farming. They had stripped the land of the trees and all that. And
Back in the 30s
1930,
on a
the
before.
Dust Bowl era was 1934 to 1937, I think.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, but 1936 was when the biggest extremes were there. And that's how California became such a big agricultural area, was because all those people from those areas moved to California
Yeah,
and started their own farming out here.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. But I do know that we've got a situation happening, and right now with all of this. So, do you have any thoughts about is this happening again? I mean, you said you couldn't find records. You can't find the records from way back, and you don't know why.
Yeah,
Um,
for many years, I used to be able to get on the National Weather Service's website and just pull up any data that I wanted to across any city in the United States. And you can't do that anymore. They only go back to 1979, which is satellite data. It's no longer ground-based stations, which really angers me because I believe that ground-based stations are a lot more reliable. But then there's also a little bit of a problem with that because generally most of them have been moved to airports and
Right.
right near the tarmac and near the jet engines. So
Oh,
you get an increase in temperature there. They
yeah,
also,
that makes sense. Hmm.
and then some of them have been moved into the city, like Los Angeles's weather station now is at the University of Southern California
Mm-hmm.
on top of concrete, and they call those urban heat islands or UHIs.
Hmm.
And so you're going to get an increase in temperature because of all the buildings, the concrete. You don't have, most of the older stations used to be out in a grass field with nothing around them.
Okay.
So yes, there's going to be an increase in temperature because you've got all the heat from the buildings and everything else during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to get an accurate reading.
Now, are satellites that reliable, really, or what do you think? What's going on?
Oh yeah, I don't, me personally, I don't think they're as reliable as ground stations because they've got to go through all the atmosphere and everything else, and they're bouncing off and bringing that information back up into space and then sending it back down to the the computers or whatever you want to say. And people say that in their orbit, sometimes it can drift and go down or up. It's never perfect. So some people say that that makes a difference in when it's bouncing back to the satellite, that it's giving it different information. I don't know enough about that. I haven't really delved into it quite a bit, but it makes more sense to me to have a station on the ground versus some satellite going around the earth, spinning around and going, trying to send that information through the atmosphere.
Right, right, right.
One of the things I'll share here um, is that, let me pull it up. Um, let's see. If you see this here,
Uh-huh.
now these gray areas
Mm-hmm.
are areas where there are no land-based stations.
Okay.
Okay. Now, NASA will put out, or NOAA, whatever you want to call it, will put this out saying that, it's been the hottest June ever. But if you look at these gray areas, they've turned it all pink and red, which means it shows that it's going hotter.
Hmm.
Even Greenland shows that it's going colder. But if you go back to that one I just showed you, there's no stations there. So and even in the middle of South America down here,
I'm
in
not
parts
quite
of Australia.
understanding that. If that, hmm, that's a bit confusing.
Correct.
Is somebody fudging the numbers here or something, or doing something?
Well, there's no proof of it, but some people
Oh.
are coming forward. There was a man that just came forward who worked for the IPCC and admitted that they were fudging the numbers. But um, we'll have to see what they. Hopefully, some other scientists will come forward. But right now, there's a lot of money to be had, and
Yeah.
so I'm still learning. I'm still, investigating stuff. But in my years, my 30 years of doing this in depth, it really frustrates me that I can't pull up anything beyond 1979. And the reason why it goes back to 1979 is because that's when they first put up one of the satellites. So they're not
Oh.
taking any of the land-based information from 1979 back and putting that information available to the user. And this should be public information, and it's not anymore.
Now, I was listening to a video this morning to be a little bit on top of things, not much, but because I don't dig into it as much as you. But there's this whole thing around solar flares and spots on the sun that contribute to our climate. Do you know anything about that? And can you share?
This is something I've been studying a little bit. for about maybe the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Let me go back to here. And right now we're in some people are saying what a grand solar minimum, which is here in 2020.
Okay.
The sun supposedly put every 11 years, which is actually a 22-year cycle because the 11th part is in the middle
Okay.
of that 22-year cycle. But there's a woman I follow who's an astrophysicist. Her name is Professor Valentina Zarkova, who back 3 years ago said that 2020 would be the year that we would know if we were going to go into a grand solar minimum. Now, this red line here is predicted. This
And
is what NOAA is predicting is going to happen.
explain again, what's a grand, what did you say, a grand?
Grand solar minimum, which means we're going to get into less sunspots,
Okay.
which means
Oh.
it could drive the temperatures on the Earth cooler.
Hmm.
And if you look in history, like this is the wave mark here, and it's almost like a heartbeat. You can see that right there. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah.
But if
Wonderful.
you see here, it's getting weaker and
Uh-huh.
weaker.
Okay.
So if we get into that, then we will have um, right now what Valentina says what will happen is we'll have longer winters and hotter summers.
Hmm.
And so if
Now, I
you
I very clearly see, looking in the 1800s there, that it was very low. Yeah, right there. Almost looks identical. It's
to what's possibly going to happen. Now
it's like
this
a.
red line is predicted. That's what National Weather Service is predicting is going to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
as you can see through these years, like 1950, about 55, I guess, it really jumped up. But here's that spike in about 1936. And 1911 was a big year too,
Oh.
back in here. So
Now,
it's
this was
hard.
before satellites too. So how are they getting this data from core samples, geology?
Some of this data is actually coming from the Chinese. They studied solar sunspots back in they said in the 16th century.
Wow.
So, and then the, Italians and the Spanish, they got into all that studying. And so a lot of this is handwritten data.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the real extreme data wouldn't be until the 1970s when we started sending up satellites.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here I believe that satellites will work because it's out of our atmosphere and, they're sending them towards the sun. They have a satellite right now that's going towards the sun to study it more. So we'll see what
Wow.
happens with that. But
What is
yes,
your best guesstimation with the red line there as opposed to what your gut maybe is telling you from what your research is telling you? Is that
well, from my gut, I think we're going to stay a little bit lower. I think the values won't go as high as predicted for 2020 because in the last 3 years, and I don't know if
hmm
anybody else has noticed this, but the weather's been changing. We've been getting a lot longer winters, like this Valentina Sarkova said,
hmm
um, and the winters have been really cold. I don't know if you felt it this year, but it was really cold this winter,
Yeah, for a longer period, now that I
a lot
recall.
longer period.
Yeah.
And so far as me storm chasing and out in the high plains, generally June is one of the best times to go out. In the last 3 years, there's been nothing going on. It seems like everything's like delayed a month.
Hmm.
That even the monsoon, it was last year, it starts up this time right now and there's nothing going on.
hmm
And last year was the same way. And then in September when I left, everything blew up.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, and this is the first time this year also since 1997, I think, that there has been no tropical storms or hurricanes in either ocean, the Atlantic or the Pacific, going on right now.
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. They're also saying all this meltdown is happening, like in the Arctic. That, oh my gosh, the water's going to, the beach water is rising and rising. What again? what are you seeing? Is there are these huge changes happening in the Arctic, like what they're saying, to scare us about climate change? Or
Well, we can go some more charts again. And know that I don't use just NOAA anymore on that, because NOAA, I think, is using scare tactics, but that's my personal opinion. I also use the Finnish Meteorological Institute and also the Danish Meteorological Institute to get my information.
mm-hmm.
Um, on the Finnish Meteorological Institute, oops, sorry, um, this here is what they call snow mass. And
Okay.
that, for the Arctic, the more snow mass you have, the better the ice is going to be.
Okay.
And this is 2020. And look how the blue dotted line is the average.
Okay.
Underneath is underneath it is when it's been extremely low.
Oh, okay.
The red line is what was measured this year.
Hmm.
These red dots,
Yes.
which is way above what is normal,
Okay.
even now down through June. And I just read about Greenland, because you also want to study Greenland, the ice sheet there that they have, because that's what a lot of people use. Is what they call the Svalbard ice sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And as of yesterday, the Greenland ice melt average is at average right now, almost perfect at average, and
Is that
still has 450 gigatons more ice than it did last year.
so? It's at its average,
Yeah,
not heating up or melting.
not melting in extremes like they say.
All
Let's see, I
right.
can show you. Here's the
Very
Greenland ice sheet here, and
This
this
is
is the
interesting.
melt.
Wow.
So if
Okay.
you see this black line, that's the average. So it's still at its average. If it
Oh.
stays within these gray lines, things are good.
Mm-hmm.
And this is based on 1981 to 2010. Now, when everybody's using this mean right now, if you can see that 1981 to 2010,
Uh-huh.
that'll change next year because they do it on 21-year averages.
Oh,
So
okay.
next year it will move from 2020, I'm sorry, 1990 to 2020, 2021. I think
Got
it's next year they change it. Maybe it's the year after.
it.
So
Mm-hmm.
that'll change. But anyways, so if you look at this year for the Greenland ice melt, it's been pretty average. Nothing extreme going on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what else do I have? And that's for the Arctic. This is Antarctic. Okay, so here's the Arctic through NOAA.
Okay.
And NOAA shows it. Let's see, let me get 2020 on here. Let me take these off. Shows it dipping down below average.
And staying in the gray as well on this
A
chart.
little bit out of the gray.
But I mean, gray is a good place-ish to be normal.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And
So it's
in
going below.
February, March, it froze up pretty good.
Yeah.
2012 is considered, now see, this only goes back to 1979 also. 2012 is considered a year that was extreme.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
but if you look at 2019 and
Mm-hmm.
2018, which the last 3 years, they're still above the 2012 average,
Wow.
or I mean extreme. So
Yeah.
there's, they're dipping down a little bit, but nothing too crazy. So these last 3 years have really been interesting, and we should see what happens. And now if you look at the Antarctic,
Mm-hmm.
let me put it on, because they always put it on extremes, and I don't like that. So here's the Antarctic, and see the blue line's right in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, this
So
is mind-boggling. You know, I heard something, Kathy, about, going back to the solar flares or the spots and 11-year cycle. What's so fascinating is what was mentioned. Something was in the 1800s, I guess, 1900s. The mini ice age that happened in Europe, and it's well documented. People were ice skating there downtown with with
yeah, all you gotta do is look at old paintings from that
I
time.
know, and it's not just paintings. I mean, this
Yeah,
this
it's
was really
documented.
happening. is there such thing? Have you heard of the 11-year cycle and the changes with the sun that does have a huge part to our climate?
I've heard of the 11-year cycle. I haven't studied it enough, but there
Okay.
was one part that's been mentioned by another scientist, and I can't recall their name right now. But in that 11-year cycle, the Earth is in an elliptical orbit around the sun,
Correct.
and there's a certain point where the Earth gets to where it's really far away from the sun than usual
Sure.
in that 11-year cycle, and we're reaching that part. And one scientist was saying that when we get into that cycle, what happens is it starts to separate. There's more pull on the Earth, so it starts to separate it a little bit. So the plates, the tectonic plates that go around the Earth,
Hmm.
start to open up more,
Hmm.
which will warm the oceans. Number one, and number two, it will create more earthquakes, and number three, it will create volcanic activity will rise. And this is something I've been watching the last year, and it's been quite surprising. I have alarms on my iPad, and they're constantly going off. Just before we started, three earthquakes and Sabacania
Wow.
in Peru, was blowing up ash. And that new one in Japan, the Ishinimo, which now has created a new island, that one just recently came up on my alerts, probably within the last 2 months.
Really?
I mean, not recently, and it's already created a new island. So this is something that's new to me, and I'm still studying it, but it's quite interesting. You'll get an earthquake alert, and then maybe 5 minutes later, one of the volcanoes will spew out some ash or a little bit of lava. So
This
that's
is this is fascinating. I would almost like to follow along with you. You're really good at posting things sometimes about the weather, but and you sent me some links, which I'm definitely going to post along with the replay of this video. But do you have a, a website dedicated to this that, we can?
there's actually two apps that you can get.
Okay.
One's called Volcano, and then the other one, let's see, the other one is called it's through the U.S. Geological Survey, and it's called. Okay, this one's called Volcanoes with a plural,
Oh,
Noes.
okay.
Um, and then the other app is, let's see where it is on here. I got so many apps.
Is this going to be for the earthquakes or something?
Yeah, I think it's just called Earthquakes.
Now, I've heard a lot about volcanoes and earthquakes and all these kinds of goodies having a lot to do with the CO2. I think that's a whole another topic. But right now, there's some talk about CO2 is actually dwindling and that we're being a little bit misled. I don't want to go into that topic right now
Well,
because,
I can show you a chart.
oh,
I
okay.
pulled them up
Well,
last night.
sure, sure, sure. But something about the CO2, we're so we're so bombarded about this whole thing of all the CO2 and our contribution, and yet volcanoes, I've heard, have so much to do with their part in it, along with other things that come with the Earth doing her little shaking us off every once in a while, so to speak,
Well,
like
here's the interesting
a
thing.
gnat. Yeah.
Here in the United States, we take our CO2 readings at Mount Mauna Loa in Hawaii on a
Mm.
volcano. So seems a little odd to me that we're measuring CO2 on a volcano. But anyways, here's a chart from that goes all the way back to 1850.
Okay.
And that's ice core data,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Mauna Loa started in 1959.
Okay.
Now here's 1936. The CO2 levels were at 310 parts per million.
Whoa. Uh-huh.
Okay, and in 1911 was an extreme year, and the CO2 was at 300 parts per million.
Okay, repeat those three again because I want people to see what I'm seeing. This is not our made up data.
No,
This
this
is
is through
right.
the through NASA. So
And we didn't have the cars that we had back in the 1910s, right? Or
right,
the
right,
airplanes going all over in 19 even the 1930s really.
right,
So
exactly.
So name those three periods. Could you point those out again? Back in 1950,
1911 was a really
19,
extreme year, and
okay.
the CO2 was at 300 parts per million.
Okay, I see that.
1936 was another extreme year,
Okay.
and the CO2 was at 310 parts per million.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, now today,
Mm-hmm.
our CO2 has not decreased. I don't know who's giving that information out. On June of last year, we were at 413 parts per million.
Okay.
June of this year, we're at 416. So we went up 3 parts per million,
Okay.
or three-point parts. Yeah. So this is the trend showing it go up, but they only go back to 1959. Like I said, that's when they started measuring at Mauna Loa. And then this is the trend that's been going on ever since, according to NOAA.
Okay.
So, and
So
even monthly, um, it's like a heartbeat. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
it
And
is.
we're in a downward trend right now.
Okay, we're down. Okay. Well, with the shutdown, all traffic and
Yeah, but
different
if you look
things
at the
happen.
previous years, it's pretty normal.
Yeah, it does look normal. So CO2, you're saying, is on the rise,
It is rising, yes.
but contributed.
Whether we
Only
contribute
by
to it, which we might contribute some, but I don't think it's the main reason why
any
uh,
ideas what the main could be? Any
Earth itself,
Earth doing her thing.
Earth
Okay.
doing her thing.
Okay. Well, this is
Because
fascinating.
and one thing I want to show too, which I found fascinating. Let's see if did I lose it here? Where is it? This article I read the other day.
Mm-hmm.
The Lindbreen um, Glacier in Norway,
Okay.
and due to all the melting of the glaciers, they found this treasure trove of artifacts from Viking life inside of it.
Oh,
And evidently, this was a road that the Vikings used to. Here it is. Let's see if we can pull it up. That's fish. Let me get this. It's an ad. Hang on.
yeah, I know.
They use this as a road, like a Silk Road, basically, like they did in China, to do
Mm.
trade and everything else. And so they've been finding all of these incredible artifacts
Because of the
from.
ice melting up there. Okay.
I don't know how to get this ad to go away. Oh, here it is. Here.
Oh, okay.
So this is here's a valley down here,
Okay.
but you can almost see the lines of where they walked up, and they were up in here in the past. They found encampments, and they found they say it was around the year 1000 AD,
Oh,
a
wow.
time of high mobility and growing trade across Scandinavia and Europe. And some of the artifacts that they found um, were like clothing,
Mm-hmm.
which are still preserved today. So you have to ask yourself, if they were using this as a trade road,
Uh-huh.
what happened in 1000 AD where there was nothing there that these people were able to cross through?
Right.
And then it became covered up by ice all these years, only to be uncovered again.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started on archaeological goodies. I love that stuff. Well,
Yeah,
this sounds fascinating. It's one of those things you want to jump on a plane and go check that out for
I
you.
know. I want to go see it.
They say they found different things. I want to go to Montana coming up to meet with Julie Ryder and possibly get an interview. She's found megaliths in Montana, which means there's a lot going on we just don't know. So I love this kind of stuff. Well, Kathy, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I think, as I keep telling all my interviewees, I'm going to have you guys back on because there's so much more to talk about, and
Yeah, there is.
I'm surmising as we keep going through the many months coming down the line into next year and on beyond, changes are going to start appearing. Maybe some. I want the truth, Kathy, and I really appreciate what you've been researching because.
Yeah, and that Valentina Zarakova said that this year will be the year that will tell us exactly what's going on. So I'm taking her with a grain of salt, but I'm also following the patterns that she's talking about. And so far, she's been spot on. So we'll
Okay,
have to
well,
see.
when we finish up here, you're going to have to give me a link to a video for her because I think it's important for people to just, you know, open your eyes, check it out for yourself. If it doesn't feel right, then move on. But but if it feels like, wow, this is something that I'm going to follow too, then that's what I hope One Heart TV is going to do for people. You know, open their minds up to what we're not told. So,
And
Cathy,
that's
this
why I do a lot of research on my own. I don't let other people tell me what to think. So
well, we're, you know, so many people like myself like want the science, yeah, and we want to trust it. But lately, we can't even trust the science because, well, there's talk about people being bought out by certain groups. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting to me that scientists are speaking up and saying, no, that's not true. And
there's
they're
a
having,
few that have come forward. We'll see what
and they're
happens.
having, yeah, they're having a hard time, Cathy. They're having doctors
They
as
lose all
well,
their
right?
funding if they talk about it. That's the problem.
Right. They lose big time grants and money. And where does that come from? We all know where it kind of comes from, you know, paying our taxes. I don't, I just, I just having fun. But no, there is something going on. I think it hopefully will get unraveled as we move forward. And I just want to thank you above all for taking me up on this. And I'm going to again share your link in a replay, maybe a couple of times. We got to get this information out. So thank you so much, Cathy.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you keep safe though. That storm change. Are you going back this year or no? You don't?
I already went this year. I'm
Okay.
back.
So you're done. So
Yeah.
you're planning it
I don't know
too.
about the monsoon because where I stay is in a house, and I don't think I can go in the house yet. So
Okay.
probably
Oh.
not.
All right, to all my followers here on One Heart TV, I'll repost this at YouTube, One Heart TV, and also replayed at oneheartinfo.org. This is your chance to start a change reaction. What does that mean for you? All right, education, information, it's the way to go. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Cathy. Until we see each other, peace. Love y'all. Take care. Bye bye.